You can't claim to like Halloween and then have not seen this movie. It just doesn't make sense. Sorry. Hello everyone and happy Halloween season! Because we are right in the thick of creepy crawly season, I wanted to make sure I provided some recommendations for the movies that I like to watch throughout this entire creepy crawly month. I am not a scary movie person. I am not a horror movie person. I don't enjoy the genre. I have an overactive imagination, so I just really can't watch the really, really scary stuff. What I do instead is watch things like this. These films are the ones that I grew up with as a kid for Halloween, and I want to share my top picks with you. It's good to feel a little bit nostalgic around Halloween because I think we all have, hopefully, some fond memories of trick-or-treating, of doing Halloween crafts, of picking out your costume and having a Halloween dance-a-thon at school or something to that effect. Now, I should make it clear here that this is not a definitive list of Halloween films or Halloween-inspired films. These are just the ones that I go back to every year and that I really, really love. I know there will likely be some missing from my list that maybe is a stalwart of your Halloween programming. I, for example, am not that big of a fan of The Nightmare Before Christmas. I said it. I don't know. I just, like, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'm also, by the way, starting with the Disney Channel-esque live action or YTV live action films, and then I'll segue into cartoons, and then I'll go into the really old classic film stuff. First, this one, R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour. This actually came out the summer, I believe, before I started high school. So I have a lot of memories of this in particular when I was buying my high school uniform for the first time. It stars Emily Osmond from Hannah Montana and Cody Lindley. Does anyone remember Cody Lindley, the sort of heartthrob of the Disney Channel of the, I want to say, mid-2000s? I'm gonna start by saying this film is not good. It's not objectively good. I think I will rewatch it every year because I have memories associated with it. But essentially the plot is that Emily Osmond, in a truly horrible black and red and blue wig, is sort of a misfit at her new school because, as we know, it's not a Goosebumps story until the kids move to a new town and their parents just don't understand them. She goes to this very creepy pawn shop. She buys this book that you're not supposed to read out loud, and no spoilers, she reads the book out loud, doesn't she? The story is about everything that happens after that action, so it's the fallout of her reading the book out loud. You're looking for just a very short piece of silly fun that has some Goosebumps nostalgia to it. This is a good one. You can get it on DVD in some places. Secondhand video stores also tend to have this as well, but I think you can also stream it on Netflix, in addition to a lot of old episodes of Goosebumps, R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour TV show that I think they ran throughout the 2010s. So if you want some Goosebumps nostalgia, start here and then watch the rest. Next, these are in no particular order, by the way. I think the best thing about Halloween movies is that I like them for different reasons, and I'll watch them at different parts of the spooky season. This is just gonna be the films I like and the films I think you should watch during this season. Twitches. I cannot recall watching this for the first time, but I know it was on Family Channel very close to Halloween. I just remember being so just obsessed with the idea that you could be a witch and you don't even know it. I think that's the Harry Potter factor, that we all thought we were gonna get a letter to Hogwarts and we were secretly magical. I think this movie plays on that idea as well. It stars Tia and Tamara Mowry. Is it Mowry? Mowry? I think it's Mowry. They are twin witches, I feel like I don't need to explain the plot to you because you have probably already seen it if you clicked on this video, but basically they come from a magical kingdom, they were separated at birth and sent to live in the mortal world with mortal parents. If this story happened any other time of the year, I don't think it would be as fun, but since it's set around the Halloween season, there's also a really great atmosphere throughout the film too. There was a follow-up to this, so Twitches 2. Twitches 1 is obviously much better than Twitches 2. I think it suffers from a bit of a sequel fatigue, but still worth watching. Disney Plus has everything. So all of the Disney Channel originals that I'm talking about today, you'll be able to find on Disney Plus if you have it. But you can also find it relatively easily around this time of year on DVD. It just gets you in the witchy spirit. I don't know, it does for me anyway. Next is these, the holy grail of Halloween nostalgic, spooky, seasonal films. Halloweentown. I have Halloweentown 1 and 2, Halloweentown High, which is the third one, and nobody's favorite, Return to Halloweentown, in which they recast Marnie with the lady from Darcy's Wildlife, if anybody remembers that. I said I wasn't gonna rank anything in this video, but I do think there is a definitive ranking of the Halloweentown films. I would love to know what your ranking is in the comments below, but I think for me, it's actually very simple. My opinion is that they get worse the longer they go. So Halloweentown 1 is my ultimate favorite, I think, when it comes to Halloween films, period. If I could only choose one to watch forever and ever, it would be Halloweentown. The best part about it is the nostalgia factor. So every scene is just dripping with Halloween spirit. I don't know how else to describe it. The best part is sort of Marnie's outfits, Debbie Reynolds as Grandma Aggie, her clothing in this. Because I'm a fashion person, I just love it. This was a pivotal film. I watched it when I was quite young. Halloweentown, definitely #1. Halloweentown 2, for a long time, I considered third in the list of best Halloween towns, but I watched it again last year and I actually think that it still retains a lot of the magic from the first one. So I'm gonna put that second in the list of best Halloween towns, followed by Halloweentown High, which I used to place second, but now I think is firmly third after watching it again. It's just sort of silly, and the CGI has not aged well at all. They used a lot of practical effects in the first and second Halloween towns, but then when it came to the third, I think they were caught in the like Star Wars prequel trap of like, the more CGI we can afford, the better. And then of course, nobody's favorite, Return to Halloweentown. They actually go to Halloweentown University. It's just, I don't know, fine. Lucas Grabeel, who played Ryan in High School Musical, of course is great, but I think a romantic lead he ain't. He's wonderful and he's very talented. I just, like, the lack of chemistry from the two leads is just astounding. This is definitely fourth in my list. This trilogy, as many would call it, and not a set of 4, is definitely part of my Halloween season. I try to watch it early on in October, and then I watch it usually on Halloween night. Next is cartoons. One that I have integrated into my list, rotation, calendar of Halloween movies is The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. This is actually really scary. I think this is the time when cartoons were still a little bit scary for kids, and Disney allowed that. And I really enjoy it because it's got, if you know the legend of Ichabod Crane and Sleepy Hollow, there's basically a headless horseman running around town stealing people's heads, and Ichabod Crane is just trying to find out who it is. But this cartoon is actually scarier than any version of Sleepy Hollow I've seen, and that includes the Johnny Depp, was it Tim Burton version? I just assume everything Johnny Depp does is with Tim Burton. But this, to me, the ambiguous ending is actually more scary than that whole gore fest of the live action. It's just a very well executed cartoon. I think it's not very long, maybe half an hour at most. I think it's that early 40s Disney animation, but I like it. Next is quite possibly the most definitive Halloween cartoon for me, and that is Alvin and the Chipmunks meet the Wolfman. I remember watching this on YTV because YTV always had Alvin and the Chipmunks, but I think it's when we got this on VHS when I was younger that I really got into this big time. When I talk to people about this movie, a lot of people haven't seen it, which makes me so sad. When I watch this, okay, this is really weird, but you know how certain films or TV remind you of certain smells? Is that just me? That could just be me. Let me explain what I'm talking about. So when we were little, my brother and I had these clown wigs and clown noses and like big bow ties because they were a Halloween costume at one point. And around this time of year, we would turn on Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet the Wolfman on VHS and, you know, just put on those clown wigs and like clown around. Matthew, I bet you don't remember this at all and you're gonna assume I'm making this up, but I swear we did this. I remember the smell of that clown wig very specifically, and I'm sure it was just a mix of like polyester and gross chemicals, but it's a very nostalgic Halloween smell for me, and this movie reminds me of that smell. I love this movie because the songs in it are like, they're bops. I don't know how else to describe it. Do people still call songs bops? I guess I don't really, but they're bops. They're so good. The general plot line is that the Chipmunks have a school play that they're gonna put on, and they have a new neighbor next door, and this neighbor is very suspicious, and Alvin watches all these scary films and reads all these scary books and then just has nightmares all the time, and he's waking everybody up. And he's very paranoid that the new neighbor, Mr. Talbot, is a werewolf. I don't think I can recommend this one enough, and I know I'm very seriously like talking about Alvin and the Chipmunks, but please watch it. If you haven't watched it already, maybe it's an early childhood nostalgic thing, and maybe you'll watch it and go, Caitlin, this is so stupid, and I'll be like, well, that's your opinion. Okay, if you have not seen Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost, what are you doing? Where were you in the early 2000s? This was on Teletoon every Halloween. It was set in Salem. There's sort of a character that's a facsimile, essentially, of what's supposed to be Stephen King, and the gang is really just there to, I think, attend a music festival? Autumn Harvest Festival. There's a witch's ghost. Is it a good ghost? Is it a bad ghost? Was she wrongly accused? Was she a good person? I mean, everything about the Salem witch trials would indicate that these people were wrongly and innocently convicted, which is really sad, and if you know anything about the witch trials, you know that they were really horrific. But, I mean, cute movie. If you haven't seen it, it's also available on DVD, and I think it's back on Netflix now, so definitely take a look wherever you might be able to get it, because it's just a fun romp with Scooby and the gang. Okay, I don't think that we can talk about Halloween and Halloween films and nostalgic films without talking about the juggernaut that is Hocus Pocus. I did not see this as a kid, but I did see it in high school. I fell in love, as I'm sure a lot of you did, immediately with this movie. It has everything. It's got Halloween songs, it's got witches, it's got comedy, it's kind of dumb and silly, it's got a little cutesy little romance, it's got nice family drama, it's got a cat, it's got everything that I want out of a Halloween movie. I feel like I really don't need to, again, explain the plot to you, but if I do, it is a movie about I guess a boy named Max, and you know, he's moving to a new town, Goosebumps style, and he's really mad, and he's got an annoying little sister, and then, you know, 3 witches come back to life in Salem. Is this based in Salem? Yeah, okay. Whoa, I thought I was just making that up, but it seems silly that it wouldn't be. And this is just the hijinks that happens all along the way on Halloween night. If you haven't seen this, why not? There was a rumor last year that they were thinking about making a sequel to this. And while my Halloween heart is just starved for more good, silly, fun Halloween content, I just really don't think you should mess with this. I don't like it when studios are just like, I want more money and people like this and they would spend the money on this again, so why don't we just do it again, but different? I hate it when they do that. Like, live action Disney remakes, I'm talking to you. None of you are good. Okay, now I'm gonna get into the more vintage classic film Halloween movies that I really like. And I know that I think for a lot of you, these may actually be the most unfamiliar throughout this list, but I cannot recommend them enough. They're relatively easy to find in a big box store. If we're talking about the slightly more niche ones, you might need to go to a video store like Cinema One, which is available all over Ontario, but The Ghost and Mr. Chicken. This is another one that I saw for the first time in high school. My mom and I would watch a lot of old movies together. This is the story. If you've ever seen the Andy Griffith Show from the 50s and 60s, I know maybe you haven't. Don Knotts was a major character on that show, and he was sort of a kind of like a timid guy. He would always sort of shake at things, and this character is no different. Don Knotts is sort of famous for playing this sort of timid character who stumbles into all these scary situations, and these movies are basically just a way to see him sort of run around and yell and stuff. But The Ghost and Mr. Chicken is, I think, has some of the best sort of jaunty 60s spooky music. Like, think The Haunted Mansion and that sort of tone to spooky music. It's kind of like it in here too. I will link below to a YouTube video that has the main theme in it because I just love it. It's so jaunty. This is basically the story of a man played by Don Knotts who's kind of timid. He is a typesetter at a local newspaper and he wants to be a reporter. And he's always trying to find the next story, but everyone in town, and the men in particular in town, are sort of, they make fun of him a lot. There's this old mansion in town called the Simmons Place. Before the mansion is torn down, he's going to spend a night in the Simmons Place to prove that he's brave and to get the scoop on a story. I won't really tell you anything other than that, but it's just a fun film. There are wacky small town characters. Sort of think Parks and Rec town hall meeting, but in the 60s. That's sort of what these characters are like. Obviously, it is a film from the 60s, so the dialogue is a little bit dated, the themes are a little bit dated, so be aware that this is not a socially enlightened film, but it is quite a funny movie, and it's charming. I really do think that if you can find this on DVD, I would recommend watching it. I haven't seen it on any streaming services. I mean, why not own it on DVD? I know DVDs are a thing of the past, I guess, but I really like it. Arsenic and Old Lace. It is from 1941 or 44. It stars Cary Grant as a man who has just married a lady. They're spending the night basically in his hometown before going off on their honeymoon. And this happens to be Halloween night. And he goes to visit his two old aunts. When I say arsenic, I'm not kidding. There is a lot of murder in this comedy. I think the best part about it is Cary Grant's reaction to what's going on around him, because he sort of stands in for the audience. And his reactions are sort of your reactions when you see the film for the first time. It's got that Halloween atmosphere that I love from a Halloween movie. It is in black and white. So for those of you who think they can't watch black and white movies, you're just straight up wrong, so just try. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's hilarious. It's slapstick comedy as well, and it's just generally a really good time. Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. Abbott and Costello, for those of you who aren't aware, were a comedy team in the 30s and beyond, so 30s to I think the 60s, and they had a series of films in which they met all of the classic Universal monsters. I'm talking like Dracula, Frankenstein, The Invisible Man, mummies, all of those Universal horror icons were teamed up with Abbott and Costello for a set of comedy movies. Much like Arsenic and Old Lace, the best part about Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein is the reaction of the characters to meeting these other characters. The concept really is that these two, I think they work at a post office. They're essentially responsible for moving crates and deliveries and that sort of thing. And Dracula actually happens to be in one of those crates. It's just a funny romp. It's not very long. Again, it's in black and white. And if you like this one, I would say this is the gateway film. I believe it was the first one to where they met all the other Universal monsters in follow-up films. I think it's the first and the best, to be honest, but if you like this one, I think you should keep watching the others because they're definitely worth a watch for sure. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I wish you a happy Halloween once again. Now, if you are looking for more Halloween content, don't you worry, because I've got more coming up. If there's anything particularly Halloween-y that you would like to see in terms of content to kind of get you in the spirit, then let me know, again, in the comments below, because I want to do as much Halloween content this year as humanly possible. And don't worry, I have a lot more Halloween clothing. I make videos every Friday, and don't forget to click that bell notification to ensure that you know when my videos go live. Because apparently if you don't click the bell, you just might not see them. Anyway, bye! It was a monster mash. The monster mash was a graveyard smash.